What's up, everybody? Gabe here from Shockham Comics, and here I am talking to Jeff French, the CEO of Imagination Mining Company. We are here at the First Shattering to celebrate Wonders of the First.
Yep.
Jeff, how does it feel to see all of this coming to life around you for the first time?
It's been really great, Gabe. Just to be able to see people take joy from something, and you all know this at Shockham, just when you can create something and actually see it bring genuine moments of joy to people, it's incredibly rewarding. And, obviously we're a company, we're a for-profit company, and that's certainly a goal. But I think the best way to do that and accomplish that goal is to bring moments of joy to people, and the rest of that will take care of itself. And that is something that we take a lot of pride in. And just last night, seeing people get their hands on some cards for the first time, it was just truly a humbling experience. Some of the things that folks had to say, the joy that they had in it, and then today as we get ready to really unload it and give people their Kickstarter orders, the folks that made the trek to Columbia, South Carolina, I couldn't be more excited.
That's awesome to hear. It's been, for us, it's been awesome to see just how amazing this community really is. You've really built something special here, and we can't thank you enough for inviting us to be a part of this event.
No, so glad you all can be here. And then, this is one of those days that sometimes we get to stand on the shoulders of giants and appear tall. And that's definitely, I'm sitting here talking to you, but the giants are the ones that are still in the room that are putting everything together. The amount of hand that I had in any of this is so minuscule, it doesn't even register. So the team has done a wonderful job to pull this together, to pull the game together. Just really, I feel like, not perfect. There's been hiccups along the way, but overall, the execution to get us to this point has been really good from the team, and just super excited about it.
Awesome. I love to hear that. What would you say the wildest feedback is that you've gotten so far from this event?
The wildest feedback I probably have heard so far is somebody saying that they didn't think the Phoenix Quill was the strongest card in the set. So Capricorn, who's one of the guys that's been really talking about it on YouTube and stuff, says he thinks that it's not. And the design team universally believes that the Phoenix Quill is the strongest card in the set. So I would say when he said that, I was just like, and he's an incredibly good player, and so that was wild. So we'll see. He's standing by it. I challenged it on it several times, and he stood by it. And also Hatcher, Magic Historian's here, when I shook his hand, he whined like a little baby that I had too firm of a handshake. So that was pretty crazy feedback to get.
So what would you say was your main force that pulled you into Wonders of the First and trying to take on this venture? What spoke to you and said, yeah, this is it, this is where we're going to go with this?
Yeah, so I've been a collector my entire life and a big fan of Magic the Gathering. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I don't think I've ever sold a Magic card. I think I've only bought them. I don't think I've ever sold one. And I traded a few here and there, but I've never sold one. So I've got a collection. And when I say collection, I do graded cards and that sort of thing. That's the type of stuff that I like to grade or like to do. And so I've always just been a super big fan of it, a super big fan of this vast fantasy worlds and that sort of thing. And I know that I wanted to kind of finish the arc of my career out doing things in the collectible space. And I have a few different lines that I want to be in with trading cards. And Wonders of the First, this big, expansive fantasy universe, is one of them. It's a Magic adjacent, old Magic adjacent type, vast multiverse type world, and with just hardcore fantasy mixed in with a little bit of sci-fi. I knew that was one that was going to be in the portfolio, and then it was just to bring it together and make it happen. And here we are with Wonders of the First, after a lot of creative work and a lot of sharpening at the chisels and beating on the rock and making it happen, and here we are. But this is one that I knew we wanted to be in this particular lane, and that lane now is Wonders of the First.
Awesome. I love to hear that. And you said this a few times. This is not a scripted question. This is off the fly. So you said, kind of this fantasy, expansive, multiverse. Wonders of the First, it does feature quite a bit of sci-fi elements as well, too. So how would you say it kind of varies? Is it more 70% fantasy and 30% sci-fi, or is it more 50-50?
It feels slightly more to the fantasy side than the sci-fi to me. Obviously, the main line with Shockham starting in Heliosynth, that one is one that definitely goes a little bit more to the sci-fi. But certainly when you get over into Sulfera and you get into Umbrathine, those are really heavy fantasy. Patria is still pretty heavy fantasy. So Fall, when you get back into a little bit more technical flying machines and that sort of thing, kind of back into some a little bit more sci-fi. So I would probably say, to me, I don't know, now that I talked through that, I'd say 70-30, 70 to the fantasy side.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's good to know. Obviously, this is the first Shattering, and I think people are going to really want to know, how this multiverse works. And, it's so vast, and there's so much to it, and there's so much to really latch onto.
Yep.
And, I think people are going to want to know going into it, like, well, what exactly am I getting myself into here?
Right. And, of course, the way it works, and you know this well, and I'm sure a lot of people that follow Shockham do, we have the different paths, and that's the way we've defined our multiverse. We follow these paths. Everything comes up to that singular moment of the Shattering in our lore, and then at there, boom, paths can go in different directions. And we really have not done a lot of exploration yet from a story and narrative side in the CCG's path. That's actually just now starting. We're going to have some stuff. I'm going to read a little letter that's been discovered tonight at the Shattering, and there'll be it'll really kind of kick off the more story-driven element. So far, we've just really tried to focus on setting vibe and tone and mood, and establishing the orbitals and kind of how they're each these own little mini universes, so to speak, and really just setting that. That's what we've really, really focused on. But now that the set is about to be in people's hands and the stories can come to life in the cards, it's now time for us to pull back the veil a little bit. Some mysterious things like the prisoner. There's just a lot of cool stuff. There is our first of the story-driven narratives, and we're going to start shaping some of that up now.
We're really excited at Shockham, to see this, because obviously, we've kind of been operating about what's been existing,
Yep.
As is right now, and it's been so fun to explore that. But, selfishly, as creative director, I'm really excited to see where your guys' story goes, so that maybe we can do some fun things in our path as well, because it should all kind of connect.
Right. Yeah.
What's been your favorite moment, or, your favorite piece of content, or your favorite, just your favorite moment in this process so far? Would you say it's been the Shattering? Has it been something before that? Can you give us some insight on that?
I would probably say that my single favorite moment to this point, I felt like we had some really good market fit, proven concepts that we were going to bring into a wide CCG. Again, a Magic adjacent type CCG, for lack of a better way to describe it, because not all CCGs are kind of like Magic. When you look at the surface of Wonder, it's like, okay, kind of like Magic. That's a fair thing to say. But we knew we were bringing some things from sports cards from a collectability standpoint. So we really felt like we had that part nailed. But the thing that when I was able to bring Brian in, partner with Brian Tinsman, who had done Magic sets in the past, I knew we had a guy who had the resume and the chops, and I knew the team was really bullish on the game. But I didn't know truly how good the game was until we went to the first playtest where we brought people in off the street at a little store here in Columbia called Firefly, brought in about 40 or so people, and they played the game without any warm-up. They didn't know what they were getting into. And that was when I knew we had something. That was the moment when I looked around that room and I saw the joy, and I saw just, when we went into that, I had said to myself, if 20% of the people that touch this really like it, we're on to something. It was way, way higher than that. It was so high, I'm like, that seems too good to be true.
Right.
Where are the people in this room that hate this? And there was one guy, and aside from that, there weren't many others. And not only that, it wasn't people that were kind of like, I kind of like it. It was like, wow, this is really cool. And it just, you can tell when someone is a 9 or a 10 on the intensity scale. You 6s and 7s don't do a lot for you.
Sure.
You don't make great products in that apathy range. You make them in that intensity. And that was the moment where I realized that Wonders of the First has a real opportunity to be something special.
Would you say that this event specifically at the Shattering, would you say that that's kind of like a continuation or an echo of that, where you're like, this is continuing those tracks, and it's continuing that story, so to speak?
I've been around a lot of stuff with cards over my lifespan, and I've seen a lot of games be played. I've seen a lot of products get ripped, and when I saw people get their hands on these cards for the first time, it's super genuine. And I talked to Tinsman, I was like, Brian, if you go to any upstart indie TCG, the people that are the biggest believers in those games, they're all going to have a good time. We don't have a monopoly on a good event here. There are plenty of other games that are doing good events. But I pointed out some things to him, and I'm going to hold back on a couple of those because I want to make sure that we leverage some things that we saw there. I pointed out to him some signal that I saw that really separated what we were seeing in the human behavior of this event versus others. Because I don't live in a vacuum. I know if you go to another, there's plenty of CCGs that you go to it and everybody's like, that was a great event, it was a great event. And I'm sure they were. But there are certain things that you would look for, and I'm like, this is not 7 and 8 good, Brian. This is 9 and 10, and that's where we want to be. We want to be in those 9s and 10s. And then we saw it again this morning in the sealed tournament, and I think we'll see it continue. I really do. So
It's always good to have, an expectation and then see it completely subverted, and obviously, like, we're excited to be along, watch the journey, and watch it unfold, as I've
we're
said
certainly
before.
excited to have you guys doing it. I mean, the stuff you're doing is awesome. You're obviously the first ones that are doing an expansion of the IP to the level that you are, and we certainly want to try to put wind in your sails at every chance we get, because I think it helps. It helps prove the point. And there are a lot of people that are walking around here. I took my little collector guides last night, and I had people signing cards that they had character proofs for. And there's a level of pride that comes with having those character proofs that nobody else has that. Nobody else has that. And we want more people to be able to feel that over time, too. So I look forward to, as the world expands, new character proofs come in. We have a lot of existing character proofs that we want to find their place in future sets, but we want to continue to grow that as well and get new people to be able to have those. That's a huge killer feature for us, and a lot of pride there. And you guys are just an example for what can be done. And so we definitely want to put as much wind in your sails as we can.
Well, and we certainly appreciate that. We're having a blast, as we continue to tell the stories, and, we obviously want to respect the core lore that unfolds as much as possible and figure out ways to, bring unique stories to
the
multiverse.
shattering. Once you get that shattering, it's wide open,
Yeah, it's
man.
wide open. Yeah, it makes sense. We've talked about a lot of good things that have been coming from this. What would you say has been one of the biggest hurdles that you've had to overcome, or one of the biggest challenges, in developing this?
Just like anything else when you're new to something. So like we have a good game team that we put together, and building a game team and a game development team is not necessarily the same as building the operations and stuff that you need. So we had to bring a lot of our operators, people that are managing logistics of how do you get paper and foil board, and how do you establish factory line time, and how do you get the right relationships with the right producers of something as simple as a collector's guide. All of those things are the challenging part. So just bringing all the logistics together, making sure that all the execution is as crisp as it can be, those are definitely the biggest hurdles. Normally my desk, the things that come to my desk are the problems that no one else has yet been able to solve. None of those are like, whoa, how does this card work? None of those are like, what should we name this character?
Right.
None of those problems make it to my desk. The ones that make it to my desk are, holy crap, we have this huge logistics problem. Can you call the factory and see what you can do to get us an extra day on the line? I mean, those are the problems that I have to solve, and those are the ones that have been I'd say the hardest.
The biggest fires to put out, literally.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. You're the boss.
That's what all I do is put out fires. That's literally what you do when you're an entrepreneur. You put out the fires. You get the problems that no one else has been able to fix.
Well, you've gotten to this point, and it's been super fun to watch. Obviously we've been a part of what we're doing at Shockham for the past year, like watching you guys continue to roll out stuff, and it's been super duper cool and super. You can see the passion just oozes out of what you guys are doing. It's really great to see. And, I really appreciate your time for this. Is there anything you can give us for what's next on the horizon for Wonders? Any final words?
I don't want to spoil the thunder that we're going to do here in a little bit, but I think there's, on the lore side, there's going to be some fun stuff. I think there's a little subset that the lore helps kick off. There's some certain cards that play a key role in that. I would love to leave this room tonight with some of the serialized versions, the orbital color matches of those cards. They're a big chase for me. So once that word is out, that's the thing I'm going to be very aggressively pursuing in the room myself. So if you find those cards, come take my money and let me have those cards. I'll be happy to take them off your hands. But it's a super exciting game. Glad y'all are here, and ready for the road ahead, bud.
Well, thank you so much for having us, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Appreciate it.
All right.